So hello everyone. We are here at OPU House and hybrids. This is our first hybrid online meeting. I'm Iacovos from OPU Collective, Organization for Positive Urbanism, and we are here today with Marina and Bram Dewolfs from Urban Foxes, based in Brussels, in Belgium. We found it very interesting to have an online meeting discussion how they actually reclaim one of the main one of the main axes in the city of Brussels, which it used to be, I guess, full of cars back in the days, and now it's one of the main pedestrian streets in Brussels. So, taking consideration the example of Makariou here in Nicosia, we would like to um, to understand more the processes, the obstacles, and how public authorities there they help in this vision. Bram, if you would like to introduce more yourself.
I'm Bram. I'm the director of Urban Foxes. I'm indeed from Brussels. Urban Foxes is actually an NGO that came to life thanks to this disobedient, you can call it protest or a different kind of protest, because it was a protest with sandwiches, picnicking on the street. And now we are mostly focusing on how to involve people in the city-making process. So we believe that one of the keys to sustainable transformation is really involving the people. Because one thing is designing for people, another one is also designing with people. And I think if we can already start doing the second, the other will also follow. Because if a big part of the people want to have sustainable transformation, the politicians cannot be deaf about this. But I will share with you later the process of how we did this in a disobedient way, because the politicians were not listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And we prepared very short presentation, me and Marina, just for a very short introduction to the Makariou issue.
Yes, hi everyone. Maybe just before I go into the Makariou case, I want to just briefly say that I met Bram online only back in 2020 when COVID happened. Sorry, I have baby going on here, so you might have some background soundtrack. Yes, we started a movement online back in 2020 when we had a lot of restrictions in moving public spaces, and it was called Make Space for People. And I think this case here again is the same story, trying to claim the space again for people, for like use it really as a public space. So I think it's better if you go through the presentation, because I cannot control the situation now. Thank you, Iacovos.
No worries.
Hi, I'm Iacovos. I'm an urban planner and a colleague and friend of Iacovos. So Nicosia, Bram has a big issue. I don't know how much you know, but it's the last divided capital of Europe. So this created this problem in the city center of livability, and it's not very, it's sort of the edge of the city. Where it was the center, it became the edge, and a lot of people left. So historically, we have not almost the recent history. Makariou was the commercial street of the city, of the capital. We had 3 shopping malls. The first shopping malls were in the high street. We had Jumbo, which was the big kids adventure. You would go every weekend. You would look forward to going to the city center. Here there was the historic stadium of the city, so all football matches were taking place here. So there were a million reasons to go to the city center, but all this drastically changed. The commercial high street died because of global reasons, as well as the the new shopping malls in the suburbs of the city. So this led to the deterioration of the street. As a result, this was the design in the 90s and 80s. It was very people-centric, yet it was sort of successful. People wanted to go there for the activities, for the diversity, and the municipality decided that they wanted to redesign the city center and the main high streets into a they transitioned Makariou from a car-centric design to a bus-centric design, wider pavements, and the avenue is accessible only to buses and taxis, with the exception of some local stakeholders and landowners. So yeah, hi. We are doing a short introduction to Makariou. So yeah, this resulted in a new design, and the adjacent streets have been closed, creating some squares. So this has been a new addition. So where you see a lot of streets leading to this high street, most of them have been pedestrianized. Uh, like the end of the road has been pedestrianized, leading to squares at the edge of the street. So it was a great initiative. It's a starting point. The project ended in 2022, and we were beginning to see some evidence of slow growth back. The shops are still empty. Again, a reminder that we have e-commerce, we have other reasons as well, but the shops are empty. But there were some signs of people going back, and despite this slight growth and despite the new park that opened in the city center, which replaced the old stadium, the authorities, the municipalities have voted to reintroduce the car so that they allow through passage. This was not an evidence-based decision, so we didn't get clear evidence that we are do this because we want to see 1, 2, 3. There's no KPIs, so it's just their approach that they think that this will solve the mobility problem of Nicosia, a city that is burdened with traffic, as all car-centric cities. So yeah, they decided that the best way forward is not to be patient and allow also to university are coming in the city center in the near future. So even this didn't influence them to, okay, let's wait for the students to come. Let's be a bit more patient with the project. So they decided, and in the last 2 months, that this will become they will allow car passage during weekdays to alleviate traffic. This is not very like well thought. Even at the end, the junctions, it will create a different. It's a one lane street, so it will create traffic within the high street. So yeah, we are a big group of citizens that want to activate the space. Firstly, we want to improve it. We see the problem. We are not like delusional. There is a problem of livability, but we don't see that cars are the solution. So this led to an activation of many groups of citizens. We did one small protest 2, 3 weeks ago. It was a very chill event. We just gathered in the area, in the street. We went up and down. We were in the small square of the street I was explaining before. So yeah, the story is this. We want to be positive, and we want some insights from Belgium of how we can become even better. So yeah, I give the floor to Bram or Iacovos if he wants to add something.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the other Iacovos, yeah, was not actually prepared for this part, and I'm not from the Nicosia originally. So yeah, as the other Iacovos was telling, is that I'm gonna stop sharing my screen quickly. So as Iacovos was telling, is that Like we gather some people and we try to see how we can reclaim or re-inhabit, let's say, the public space of Makariou, and that probably in the near or longer future can show to the stakeholders of that street or to the public authorities what it means to yeah, either introduce cars again to the street beyond the restrictions from the EU, since it was an EU funding, and what does mean to create spaces more for people, public, semi-public, private spaces along these streets. So, are you ready, Bram, to share your screen and your the different processes you took part there?
Yeah, of course. Maybe just a quick question. Apart from the European project, is there a reason why you feel it's necessary to fight so much for this street? Or would it also be an option, because you mentioned like surrounding streets to be pedestrianized? Would it be also an option to focus on the surrounding areas?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. And Iacovos is excited to answer.
Yeah, I guess we are doing this because it's the only one street that we have which is more people-centric in this. Not the only one, but that project was the, let's say, landmark of we are attempting to create a more people-centric city center, and it finished. In 2 years when it finished, they decided, okay, we don't want this people-centric mentality and we want to allow car passage. So for us, it's not that it's the most strategic and important street of the city center. As I explained, the city expanded, so we have the center is not the center anymore, even geographically wise, because of the suburb and the division of the city. So, but still, it's something important for us as a stance, so that we are for people centric. So, Marina, you want to add something? Please do so.
Yes, and sorry about before.
No
and thank you for presenting. Just to note, I don't know if we emphasize on the fact that it's a very important a bus lane corridor, this the street. So in our case, we wouldn't go for like 100% pedestrianization, but of course, like you said, the other streets in the area can be more can become pedestrianized or more friendly to walking. And I guess for us, it's this specific case is a symbolic one. Makariou has been always the high street, and everybody has a lot of memories about that street. So for us, it's also symbolic that if we don't fight for this one that has been so important in the memory of so many different generations, then it will be very difficult to defend any other potential similar case of a mobility corridor that it's important in establishing sustainable mobility in the city and more people-friendly approach.
Yeah, I understand. It's indeed like you don't want to let go of this bone that they gave you, and now it's kind of let's say like a symbolic thing as well to fight for it. Maybe before I start the presentation, before I will give the floor to Michael, who raised the hand, maybe also just to say that when we were working on these things during 5 years, we had pushed through 3 major situations in Brussels, or 3 different locations, which of I will present 2, and they have a different approach. But the third one I won't be presenting is the one in Ixelles, Fernand-Coq, and this also has a bus lane. And it's true that it does something indeed to take away cars and just have the bus. But it's also not a street that people will reclaim naturally because there is a frequent bus. But in that case, I think you can take into your battle for plan B, if the city doesn't want to retract, you can always try to create focal points of quality quality space around this main street. I think this could be a nice plan B. And like Marina said, it's not only about the streets, it's also about creating space for people. So I think there are a lot of win-wins you can create, apart from also mentioning the economic value of making it less car-centric. There are a lot of numbers that are available widely about the pedestrians and cyclists spending more locally than cars. Yeah, but maybe there's something Michael wants to say or ask before I start.
Just to put it into context, the project was first conceived during the generation of the Integrated Mobility Master Plan that was back in 2010, through which one of the most important actions in the plan was to create a pair of streets that would be turned into one-way streets, and so that on the larger of the two streets, which is Makariou Avenue, we would put the bus lanes. The northern section, which is the section under consideration now, is it was less wide. So after a couple of further studies and modeling, it was decided to remove the car lanes completely and allow only just some traffic only that had its destination in the area there. Later on, there was the municipality went ahead and did an urban planning study for the city center and decided to create this regeneration of the commercial triangle of the city center, which included Makariou Avenue, Stasikradous, and Evagorou. Stasikradous runs a little bit parallel. It's a less important street in terms of traffic, but it was a very commercial street and a kind of high-end commercial street. That one went first, and it was a big success, actually. There was still some, the traffic was still allowed as it was before, but it was very little, the traffic. But they created these spaces for pedestrians and removed parking actually from the street. And when Makariou followed, actually it was in order to get the projects going, the municipality and the then mayor of Nicosia, they fought very hard to convince the government to go ahead with the project and actually seek the European funding. So it was a project that was actually spearheaded by the municipality at the time. And it's a bit of a contradiction that now the same municipality with a different mayor and a different municipal council, where most of the councillors are probably the same, they voted against the project.
Thank you for the clarifications. So yeah, the triangle is more this axis here. That was referring. No. Ah, yeah. Okay, sorry. I guess because we are a bit of time, maybe we can slowly going to the two examples that you would like to share. However, because I know Fernancoc, every time I'm there, actually, I say that it's like a Makariou of Nicosia, indeed, which is sad that we don't have that, but it's fine. Yeah, can you share the screen, by the way?
Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, so basically I have two presentations, one showing a bit the context in Brussels, and then a second one, because you had asked about it, a bit more in depth of how we worked as a movement. I will start maybe with the the one with the context. And I will go fairly fast, but as you said, there will be moments at the end to ask. Okay, normally you should be able to see it, correct?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, good. So yeah, that's me. There are some examples of activism that we have done. I won't do point 3, just a small intro on what Urban Foxes does. So we are basically striving for sustainable and inclusive co-created spaces. We focus on methods, and these are our roots, as you can see in the activism and non-formal education. Here are some of our projects that we have done and that we are doing. And we try to be in the middle of the quadruple helix, which is not always very easy. Some more projects, tactical urbanism. And then I will go to more in depth to where we are. We are in Belgium, a very small country you see there. And we are very diverse because we are the second most cosmopolitan city in the world, as you might know. This is me when I was a kid. And this was where I was born, in Hoegaarden, which is only 40 minutes from Brussels, but it's a whole different reality. And maybe it's also good to know that we have famous beer. But if we look at the more urbanist approach, Belgium is famous for its ribbon development, as you can see along the national roads. And every Belgian's dream is to have their own detached house and garden. Why is this important? Because it's really about who decides how our cities look like, and how come that we had a very big issue. Expo, and our then time mayor was also the director of a concrete factory, so who was able to do all the car-centric renovations with tunnels and bridges. And below you can also see the prettiest parking lot in Brussels or in the world, the Grand Place. At that time it was full of cars. And I will come back to that as well, because a lot of people don't see the urban environment as something dynamic, but more something static. And I think this is something you have to remember as an activist, but I will get back to that later. So yeah, if we would design our houses like we would design our cities, we would have a garage, very centric and big. And I think this is also the case for Cyprus. What I've seen and heard from people, it's very car-centric. Cars park everywhere, legal or illegal. They get a lot of space, and pedestrians get less and less space. Maybe quickly look at Brussels. There is a very big difference between the access to green in Brussels. This is a map of green, and this is actually the map of the income. So you see that the rich people can afford a place in the green. And also important for later, there you see 4 cities of Brussels. We have 19 different cities, and they are in the same list as the top 50 of the other cities in the world for most dense cities in the world. So some of them are even more dense than Delhi and Cairo. When we look at the map from above, you see the very typical heart shape of the historical center, which is, of course, the shape of the old fortified walls. And nowadays, it is a ring road. And these are a few things that you need to keep in mind for Brussels. And we have medieval streets. We have a lot of building for cars. We have the urban sprawl because people want to have their own affordable house and their garden. And we have huge tax benefits for company cars. At one point, Brussels was the most congested city in the world. And who says congestion also says air pollution. And I think this is also something, when it comes to activism, you also can use these kind of criteria and arguments to convince policymakers to work on that, which is even reinforced by EU policy. And as you can see, and maybe you also have it, the cars take a lot of space, even on the rails. In Brussels, and I believe also in Cyprus, at least 80% of the public space goes to cars. And if you would take away the space, it will leave a very small margin. And this is how it looked like before 2012. So quite some access towards this boulevard, which passed through this historical center and the stock exchange. If I'm not mistaken, there were 4 car lanes, so 2 in every lane, 2 in every direction, and there were more than 20,000 cars passing by per day. You can see it very clearly there. And a bit further, there was also, so maybe it's interesting to say that this area was always called Place de la Bourse, which means the square of the stock exchange, but it's very difficult to identify a square. And this was called Square of Brucaire Square, but also there, no square at all. And this is also something that we used to our favor. We were saying that these places were designed as squares, but they were, in a way, I would use maybe a strong word, they were raped in the 50s, and we were still suffering the consequences of this neoliberal city planning. And this is the man who has changed my life. Later, in even a bit more detail, he was very smart because he was one of the people who fought to get the other square that we saw, the Grand Place, power free in the 70s. And what is also important to know, I think, is that they promised 10 years before, so now I think more than 25 years ago, they promised to make it, let's say, not completely car-free, but low on cars. And he wrote an open letter to remind the politicians that things were very, very slow. And you can have a second to read it. This is just a small part of his very well-written letter. And I think when you're an activist, it's also interesting to see which public figures or which important figures can support you by, for example, igniting this kind of movement. Because, of course, if you think of a revolution, you have to have a bit of a dynamite, but you also have to have a bit of a spark. And I think this man gave a spark. I was one of the people who read this open letter, and I made a Facebook group for 8 friends. And this Facebook group pretty much exploded because I had 2,000 people wanting to join this group, and I had to manually add these people. So basically, it started with a Facebook group, and I will get into detail a bit further on. So in his letter, Philippe Van Perez, this quite famous professor, he said, why don't we take disobedient action? And why don't we, instead of just a sit-in, eat our sandwiches on this Boulevard Anspach by blocking the street for cars? It's also important to know that this is a very symbolical place because the stairs of La Bourse were already bringing people together during protests or during victories of football. So it was already sometimes reclaimed. Even if it was too busy, the street was reclaimed as well. It was blocking the cars spontaneously. And we thought, okay, we have to kind of create a new narrative. And how are we going to get people to this picnic? Because that was also what he said. Why don't we block the street in a disobedient way? So without asking any permission. So a friend and me, we went to work and we used our very limited Photoshop skills at that time to create a narrative. Below the half, you can see a quite family-friendly narrative. You also see the mayor from the past. We always like to kind of make jokes, and he even has a tattoo like I love picnics. So the lower half shows a very inclusive and sustainable alternative. But the top also shows quite some activism, because it's really about reclaiming the streets and also saying that we have the right to do so. So this is what we did now 13 years ago. And I also have to mention that yesterday was exactly 10 years ago since they made the street car free. But before we're there, of course, we have to have people. And we did a lot of effort going around, flyering. The Facebook events kept growing. We were getting more attention. So it was really a big effort by a lot of people. There was even the imam in the mosque saying to people that they could come and they should come. But because people in Brussels always come late at 12 o'clock, there were only 10 people. But we did reclaim the street. And luckily, at 1 o'clock, there were more people. So there were 2,000 people. Later, I will also explain you a bit how we did it physically to block the street. As you can see, people eating sandwiches. It was very inclusive and very, let's say, not so polarized, because it was not so much about shouting and protest, rather than taking the space for what we wanted to be. And I think this was one of the very big criteria for us to be successful as a movement. We were disobedient, but we were also very peaceful, and we were inclusive for all ages and all cultures. The next big explosion was the next day, because we had sent this to the Belgian news agency, and maybe because there was not a lot of things going on, we were taking up in more than 100 news outlets, going from Al Jazeera to Mexican newspapers and even Chinese newspapers. So yeah, this is in short, but I will come back in detail. And I think throughout the last 10 years, at least in Belgium and Europe, there is a movement away from parking and more into parks. And these are also some things that we were using to show the added value of this public space. This is, for example, the space taken by one car, 8 square meter, showing an immediate added value to public spaces. And then, long story short, but I will pick it up later again, is that we fought around 2 years and a half, picnicking, I think more than 10 times, going in debate with different politicians. So it was always kind of a small or big battle, I would say. And at one point they said, you know what, summer is not so busy anyway. We're going to give you the summer months to do a pilot and to test these things. And it was a very, very big success. There were also no buses driving there because there was an alternative route. So yeah, and at one point, all of a sudden, out of the blue, the new mayor said, okay, I'm going to make the biggest pedestrian zone in Europe, surprising us because we never really asked car-free place. We asked for a street with less cars, but he went all the way because I think he had a very big ego and a willingness to present himself as a revolutionary mayor. And this is how it looks like now in Brussels. So in a bit, you can see the transformation of this street. So yeah, we always say that an image says way more than 1,000 words. And later, maybe I can show you the second project that we did, but maybe depending on you, if you want to go in depth and already maybe have some questions now, or you want to see the other case, or you want to go more in depth, we can do that. So tell me a bit, do you already have questions? Maybe you have a lot of questions. I will go in depth more about this movement, but depends if you have some urgent questions.
We have a question from here. Where they are taking jobs in that street, and what was the trouble in this debate?
Indeed, that's a good question. There was indeed quite some resistance from many shopkeepers. Let's say half of them had resistance, but this resistance mainly came from, let's say, an incorrect perception. And this incorrect perception, we also invested time and energy in to prove them wrong, because their perception was that 70 or 80% of the people shopping there came by car, while the truth was, the reality was that only 20% of the people shopping there came by car. So this was an important moment when we were able to communicate these real numbers. So I think it's also very important to show other initiatives and other numbers from around the world to make them kind of, aware. And it's also maybe a good idea to, have a nice chat with them before you do that. And having them on your side, maybe ask them, what would you like to have instead of space for cars? Is there maybe a way that you can benefit? Do you want terraces? Do you want to maybe have a weekly market on the street? So these are all things I think in order to get them on board, it's very important to think about a win-win for them. Maybe also important to say that we had tried several times to have a discussion with the municipality before we had the actual protest, and they were never willing to talk with us. So I would also recommend you as first steps, if you didn't do it yet, have a good chat with them, and maybe see together with the municipality if they're willing to somehow discuss certain things. Anything else?
Can I ask, is there a high density of permanent residents around the area? The first question. The second, is the area serviced by underground train?
Yeah, good question. So it's indeed a very highly dense neighborhood. Apart from residents, it's also one of the most popular areas for tourists, and there is indeed underground as well. So I think we were lucky on the level that Brussels at least has very good public transport facilities, and also especially metro stations. On the level of train stations, we have 53 train stations in the region, and we have hundreds of subway and tram stations. So we are very lucky on that regard. So even though we are still as a country very car centric, I think Brussels is an exception because you don't really need a car to reach the center.
Can I ask about the sustainability of the initiative? Like, how did it? You had the first picnic, and it was for the first 10 minutes not a success, but then suddenly so many people came, and that's amazing. But how did you keep the ball going? I don't know what's the phrase like.
Yeah,
what
that's a good question. Yeah, and if it's okay, I will answer it in the next part. That's good.
Yeah.
And then I will share with you the second part of my presentation, which goes a bit more in depth. And normally you should be able to see this very old presentation, which was made in Prezi. So what is Picnic Street? So I cannot highlight enough that for us it was very important to be disobedient, because we believe we have the right to reclaim our public space. At one point there was a group of people in Antwerp. They also wanted to do it, and they asked permission. They were denied, and this is where their movement stopped. So yeah, you can see for yourself that it wasn't the greatest idea. We were open for everybody. We functioned in a horizontal way. We didn't have a real structure, and we didn't have political ties. There were also a few people that wanted to come in the initiative, which were linked to political parties, and we said to them that it wasn't a good idea for the success of the movement, because then we would be kind of identified as let's say, a political leftist green party. And we also didn't have one fixed spokesperson. So we were always kind of moving around, asking people if they want to be spokesperson. In the end, it was mostly me at the final, because I was the one investing most of the time, and people thought it was good if I stayed. But in the beginning, there was not really a face. And that's also the reason why we used in the flyer a brown paper bag over our head to not be identified to one or two people. So it's really the movement that's important. Regarding your question, I will answer you in a bit. So basically, this was our second press release. So it's good to say that the people that were involved, apart from the people that came to the picnic, I think we're around, let's say, between 30 and 40 people. Of a kind of a group of people who were collaborating intensely with us. And there were also journalists, there were activists, there were mobility experts. So we really were a very diverse and skilled group. What was quite good from the beginning is that we had clear demands. So here you can see, we want a city with less space for cars, more space to ride a bike, go for a walk and hang out. So from the beginning, we made our demands made clear. So I think this is also very important when you start a movement, that you agree as a group on the things you want. So I showed the movement as a tree. As I told you, the movement didn't just start with the tree, but it started with a seed. And this guy, as I said, created the seed. Here is a part of the text he wrote, and he was very smart, because in the last sentence he said, I would like the young generation, at that time the Facebook generation, to take initiative. And I was one of the people taking initiative. And at that time, there were several initiatives launched after this publication on Facebook. And it was actually me and a few people actively looking for these different initiatives and reaching out to join forces. And there were many different initiatives and event pages, and we tried to channel it into one strong communication page. And then the same night, we had a meeting with all these people that were, I mean, not everyone, not all the 2,000, but with around 50 people. And we planned the first picnic. And we, of course, thought about a lot of different things. Obviously, it was a team effort. I'm the one talking now, but there were a lot of people involved. Like, we had social media. We were also going around the neighborhoods to flyer. We had regular press releases. We had interviews, visuals, websites. So it's a very big effort, and we didn't have any budget. So basically, I wouldn't say this cost €0, but we never had any funding. Every euro that we used came out of our own pocket. But what was very good is that here you can see like this positive cycle. There was a big buzz going on. And actually it started basically with this kind of event that we made, and this group started growing. The local media started posting it, and then also this kind of group started growing. So I think it's also important, especially in these days, that you can get kind of some social media experts part of your movement. But not only that. In our case, in this situation, the numbers were really the power, because we had never asked permission, but we had received permission from the police to claim the street, because they saw, okay, it's going to be a peaceful protest. It's going to be between 2 and 4. So they basically allowed us basically a bit in secret. So what we were doing was also rattling the cage. We were kind of, we were, how to say, we say play cat and mouse with the politician. And we really wanted to make the politicians feel uncomfortable. And because we had the numbers, the politicians really started to feel uncomfortable, because they started to notice that people really wanted to have a change. And every picnic, this was reinforced that there was a big part of the people in Brussels wanting to have a transformation. So here you can see what the water was from this tree. So there was a conventional media, newspaper, the social media, but also oral promotion and the flyers, creating like a new narrative. And then, of course, it was a team effort. We had created different working groups. We had safety, trash, animation, lobbying. We never really had to engage with the safety aspect because the police had taken over from us. We had thought of a different way if we would block the cars for the cars to drive, but we never had to do it ourselves. It was always the police intervening for us, which was quite lucky. But we had thought about what happens when we block the street, where do the cars go, and how can we make sure that the children who take the street are not run over by cars. So this is very important that you also think also about the image. So we never left any trash behind. So there was a working group going around with garbage bags, so it wouldn't be used against us in photos saying that we would kind of leave the place completely trashed. The first picnic was really a success. Also due to the nice weather. The second picnic, it was raining cats and dogs, and only 10 people stayed. So it's also a bit of luck you have to have with these things. But I think one of the reasons that we had so much success, that this is not super relevant, I think, was that it had a low threshold. So we were not asking people to glue themselves on the streets. We got the word out, so it was a very diverse group of people. It was fun and social protest, and we had nice weather. And of course, the question you asked before, how did you manage to keep it up? Well, a lot of energy, a lot of working, a lot of teamwork, a lot of creativity, flexibility, and is really about keep hitting the nail and try to engage as many people as possible. Beware to not polarize too much. And also what we didn't do was to offer too many solutions. We were saying, okay, look, it's not our job to offer a solution. We are not the people working for the city. There are people paid to do so. We're just citizens saying that we don't want to have a situation like we have it now. So maybe also don't overstep your role and take too much of a responsibility having to design something completely new. You're just citizens saying that you want it different. And it's actually the job of the politicians to listen to you. Here you see again these photos that went viral. So we became pretty much in the spotlight. Through the course of the next 5 years, mobility became a major electoral issue and is intensively covered by local national media. Before, mobility was not really a thing. I would say that now the big thing is also participation, because we were not really involved in the transformation of the street. There was also a promise, and we also became a household name. People knew us, facilitating future action. And thanks to this picnic, a lot of people met, and there were a lot of different initiatives reinforcing each other. So yeah, this is, I think, in a nutshell, the Picnic the Streets movement, but I know it's very difficult to present 5 years of activism. So I'm again open for your questions before I show you the second part of another case. Yes, Christos.
Hi. I'm just wondering how was it? Was it a bit like the Just Stop Oil protests that we see now? Did you have some confrontation with drivers who were blocked? Are you all agree?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part, Christos? I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Yeah, so I'm seeing similar, I don't know actually the similar, that's the question, with the Just Stop Oil protests that we see around mainly in the UK. I'm just wondering, was it similar? Did you have confrontation with drivers? Or was it a bit different to that?
There were a few moments, especially in summer, when we had to physically block the street ourselves over and over again, that sometimes there were a few cars that drove in between. We didn't have major issues with car drivers because there were enough streets to bypass this square. But we were aware of the potential danger of a car being a weapon. That's also why we took it very, very serious to have a working group and also these kind of fences to block the streets. So yeah, I would say when you compare it to other protests, I would say that ours was really on a level of aggression, very, very low. And I think this was one of the key points of our success, that we weren't polarizing the action. There were not people with megaphones. There were not people gluing themselves. You know, it was really a friendly vibe showing what we wanted from the city. And that way, it was also, let's say, we were not evoking too many aggressive feelings, even though there were aggressive feelings from the opposition. But if we would be also, again, very aggressive towards them, then I think it would have escalated. As it is going on now in Brussels, there is a very big escalation when it comes to cars versus bikes. And I would always say that we would try to not create too much polarization.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no more questions for now. Then I maybe will show you the second part, because as you can imagine, if a movement is successful, other people and other neighborhoods also want it. And this is actually what happened. This is what happened after the picnic protest. We got an email from a neighborhood in Brussels, which is called Molenbeek, and it's a very, very dense and very poor neighborhood. And people asking us, can you come and do the same in our neighborhood? And I will show you a bit also what the importance is of an urban narrative. A lot of real estate developers are using AI and of course Photoshop to show people how it can be. And I think as an activist, it's also important to use these tools to show people a different imaginary. So why not, hack these tools and create it for the benefit of the people? So this is how the Porte Innov, which is actually on the edge of the city, it was one of the gates to the city. This is how it looked like in 52. Quite a nice neighborhood with sand and enough space for kids. And in the background, you see some of the factories and breweries. So even though it was a very dense neighborhood, it was actually quite nice for kids. Kids were also playing on the street. And then, of course, 58 came and things changed. This is how it looked like before. And this is how it looked like in the beginning of 2000. Really a chaotic and very dangerous intersection between tram, pedestrians, bike lanes, and cars. And what is also important is to use the data that's around. So there was a very big need for people to have space. As I mentioned, Molenbeek are in the top 50 of most dense cities in the world. I think it could also be interesting to check what the case is for your case in Nicosia. In our case, it was half a square meter of public space per person as public space. And we really use this kind of metaphor a lot. I mean, not even a metaphor, like really a science. And this is how it looked like before. There were a few green patches, but these green patches were really crashed. And there were also quite some drug users. And so first thing we did was clean up. Maybe I forgot something. So we also picnicked on this street, but we saw that this place wasn't as symbolical as the city center and that we couldn't continue this protest in this way. So we thought, okay, instead of blocking the street, why don't we use another approach? And this approach goes more into like placemaking and participation. We were focusing on the green patches that were around there. And we started cleaning up, and we also started planting grass with the neighborhoods. And this is actually grass that we had received from the car exposition. The car exposition used this grass to greenwash their cars, and we went to get it and we planted it because as you can see, it wasn't really green. And then we came to the idea that we could involve people and they maybe even fundraise a bit of money to have extra green and trees, which led to us selling 1 square meter of grass. And also, again, using existing images. This is from Berlin Tempelhof to make people show what it could be, because it's very difficult for people to see the new reality. So we saw that when we started first reaching out to people, there was a retired groundskeeper, a gardener, showing the kids how to garden these things. So this was the patch we were working on. But of course, you also had this horrible road a bit further. And occasionally, we're also doing some activist thing there. As I mentioned, so we were using this new narrative, and we also did a crowdfunding campaign. And I think we had over like €6,000, giving people certificates to come and plant grass and trees together with us. And that way, we were also creating kind of ownership with the people. And we even got like €1,000 from a shop to make this playground. And you know what they say, when you build, they will come, and people really would come. And the grass that we had left over, we had used to do some activism, because of course we're activists and we want to be a bit annoying sometimes for the politicians to make our message clear. So it was always going like between constructive action and also some annoying things. And we even put the grass on the sidewalks. And we came with an image, with a narrative, with an imaginary Canal Park, like a common dream for the neighborhood. And maybe the crazy thing that we did is that you probably know these kind of signs that inform people about ongoing works. Well, we made a fake sign saying that this will come because they have promised us 3 times. But in the first phase, it will be the citizens making the first part of the park, and a second step, they will take over. And here you can see us making the big sign. And the funny part of this is that the mayor of this municipality called the minister president to shout at him, and he was very angry because he wasn't informed about this. So it's also about creating a bit of, division between politicians and seeing who is more open for this idea. And we also were activating the space with market, with the neighborhood. And as I mentioned, we created this very small green oasis, but the schools were using it a lot because schools also didn't have any space. And these were other partners of ours. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was also the announcement that they were going to make a big park. And here you see the small green zone that we were working on here. And this became reality. We had a bit of more participation in this process. And so, yeah, this is how it looks like now. And also the nature came back. And so I'm still very proud that we were able to turn this place into a big park for the neighborhood. And what is also nice is the way that it was conceived. So instead of putting everything already there, the first step was to make it green. And every year there will be something new added based on the whole participation process of the people, what people would like in this park. So I think the evolutionary design is also very interesting to take into account. I think this is, let me just check. This is everything from my part, but of course, I can imagine there are some questions. I know it's very brief, but it's very difficult to pinpoint, and that's also, I think, why it's good to have some questions from your side.
Wow, thank you, Bram, from Iacovos, the second. I guess it's always, this is very inspiring for us, and always when we're talking here at OPU with the team, which is sort of, we relate to you, but we feel that you are OPU in 15 years. So we have some, like, you are what we want to achieve in 15 years. What you did, this process is something that we want to take into consideration and get inspired. And these are some similar journeys that we want to do in Cyprus. So having seeing this firsthand from you, it's very nice, and hopefully we can have, you can be our supporter and advisor in the future through one way.
Of course, it would be my pleasure
no
to.
questions, only excitement from me.
Actually, when we discussed with Bram and Marina how long could be this presentation, it was also the part of urban foxes, and due to limitation, I was like, yeah, maybe we don't really go through that, but then maybe we explore that through the questions if it's necessary. And actually, I have a question. Did urban foxes exist before? Not, right? Yeah.
No, we got to know each other through the protest. And then due to, let's say, getting massive burnouts, because activism requires a lot of energy and we're all kind of in a burnout, we decided to make a nonprofit to also focus on the fun things. And with the nonprofit, we were making very small, constructive, positive things, not always as an answer against, but as a constructive answer towards. So Urban Foxes came from the protest, but let's say with the DNA, but because an NGO or nonprofit is not allowed to do illegal things, we approach it from another way. But I would say that if I look back at the activism, there, with the work we did with Urban Foxes the last 10 years, there are a lot of things we would also be able to use in the activism. I would really say that if we would do it again, we would really work more on the imagination of the people, like what they would like. And maybe even if it's not possible to think big, think small. Even by taking away one parking spot, you can create like a lot of things. As you saw with the pétanque with the kids, maybe a terrace for a cafe, or a terrace that can be used both by the clients as the people to picnic. So I think even if you think it's not possible on a big scale, there are also a lot of small battles to win. But maybe the most important thing I would have to say is that when you do activism, it's very important to do the things you like to do. Don't take any actions or projects that you yourself wouldn't like to do in your free time. This petanque idea came from us just having a good time. And all of a sudden it became a thing, a project. Same with the picnic. You have to eat anyway, and people enjoy company. So don't do anything that you normally wouldn't do. Me personally, I don't like to go to protests because I think they are quite counterintuitive. Shouting, I don't feel too well. So choose something that you as a person also like to do.
Yeah, nice. We relate to these feelings, at least me.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one question here. I guess we
Hi, Bram. My name is Stefanos here at OPU House. Thanks
Oh.
for the examples. So the examples you showed us are basically things that you wanted to change. Like, of course, you showed us maybe some photos from the 50s of how it used to be, but then it changed. A lot of time passed. I was wondering if you have any advice on, or if you would maybe adapt some of those tactics for a case where we have something like what we want to have now, but then we don't want that to be taken away from us. I don't know if there's like something that you would do differently or something that you would adapt from what you did in this case.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the most important thing I would leave today to leave behind is the fact that every situation is different, both on a spatial level, but also on a political level. But in a way, what is not different is to try to take on board as many different stakeholders as you can. From the beginning, if you can, go and talk to the shopkeepers because they're important stakeholders. But it's difficult to give you a formula or to say how I would do it differently, but because it very much depends on your team you have, on the composition of the stakeholders locally, your politicians. I always say, if you can get around the table with your politicians, do so. Because if they agree on something, it will go very fast. We had to fight for 3 years in order to get this. And I think sometimes if you can have a chat with a policymaker, you can convince them, I would say. Yeah, so I would really say, like, go for a large coalition, look for organizations that are in this field, and always look for a win-win. But also don't be scared to aim for small victories.
Thank you.
Andrula wants to ask something. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Yes, I'm Andrula. Thank you very much for the presentation and for organizing this, for your insights, Bram. So I'm calling from Limassol, Cyprus, which I don't know if you've heard anything, but it is a city very heavily plagued by gentrification, super gentrification, if I may. It's something that's been happening over the past 2 years very violently, and locals are like very quickly and extensively displaced. It's a really serious problem. I'm not sure if I have a question. This is the reason why I came to this call, because I'm very concerned about it, and I feel it's a problem that's almost impossible to respond to as a civilian. So I just wanted to let you know, and then maybe ask. It seems like the case you're describing with what you did in Brussels was something that was a little bit more mild in relation to what we're experiencing here in Limassol, but I wanted to see if I understood that correctly, or if through your experience and discussions and activism, you've talked with people that have tried to do some activism around more kind of violent and fast and serious cases of gentrification.
Yeah, I think the gentrification aspect is very interesting. Sometimes we had, even from, let's say, non-profits in the civil society fighting for citizens, we had the critique saying that, yeah, if you will make it greener, it will gentrify. So for me, this is not an excuse either, because for me, in an ideal scenario, every neighborhood has enough green. That way, no neighborhood will be more popular than others. So not doing anything for me is not a solution, because I see in what conditions people are living. So for me, it's their basic right. On the level of gentrification, it's true that as an individual, it's very difficult to do something against it. I also heard from I think from Iacovos before that a lot of these properties are owned, I don't know, by the city or by real estate. But in Brussels, for example, 80% of the I don't know who is it you, Andrula, with the mic? I just hear a lot of yeah. Thank you. Sorry. The city of Brussels owns 80% of the real estate, which means that they are an extremely well-placed actor to not create gentrification. Because if they want to rent it out to starting creatives or more social projects, they can. So I'm also well aware that gentrification is real, but as an individual or even as a small movement, it's very, very difficult to fight against it. And it will often slide into a very violent or very polarizing protests, as we can see now in Venice and Barcelona, which doesn't mean that they don't have the right to do that. Protest is their right. But yeah, gentrification, I think we have to really look at the big players, often city and real estate, and maybe even find a win-win with them. Imagine that these properties are empty. What good has anyone with these empty properties in the street? So, you know, I believe very much in creating win-wins. But in the last picnic we did, we really talked. I mean, we really put this in the poster, saying that we didn't want any gentrification to happen, and that the city should be aware of this process. That if you make something pedestrian, that they also will have very big changes. So yeah, it's between advising municipality to beware, and to also take a step back as a citizen to understand that your role is very marginal in actually changing the gentrification process.
So actually in Makariou Street, there's not so much residential, like highly residential. However, there are some new developments, but it's mainly more luxury apartments. And yeah, some people, they say, yeah, maybe the introduction of cars is linked to that, maybe not.
A quick question is, like, do you feel that it's for me it's important to be site specific, like talking about a street, but does I guess the philosophy applies to the whole city, but how do you limit yourself? We are talking about this street only, but for me, like when I talk about Makariou, which is the street, I talk about the whole city center. It's not about the street, it's about the whole city center. It's about the suburbs, how they connect with the city center. So yeah, how do you limit yourself? That's a question.
Yeah, very good one. In our case, it was a very symbolic street. And also because it was named to be a square. So it was a very symbolic choice to choose this, thinking that if we can make this car free in the center of Brussels, hopefully the rest will follow. The reason why I also asked before my presentation to what extent you really want to focus on the street is because sometimes when you cut a big street, it will also affect the smaller streets around it. And maybe this is something you have to take into account. Maybe you can go to another philosophy saying that maybe you don't want to cut the street, but you want to create some sort of super block in the neighboring streets. Because if the street is not so much for the normal people, to what extent are they going to benefit? So I think it's really something that you as a group have to ask yourself, what is going to be your focus? It's going to be a choice, but I would say maybe it's also interesting to talk a bit with the neighborhood, with the people, how they see it. And then again, if you think, we don't want to block this whole street, you can also try to get another pilot phase. It's a difficult question. I think you want to have the biggest impact possible, but you're also struggling quite a bit in Cyprus with the car-centric planning and cars parking everywhere. So I don't know if one street is going to change it completely. So I don't know if this approach is going to be really the same for you.
Yeah.
No,
Artemis.
yeah, and Artemis wants to go.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Bram, for your presentation, and thank you, OPU, for organizing this. Mine is more like a comment. One of my takeaways is this attention to the ego of politicians. Like, it really struck me when you said that the new mayor decided to make the whole street pedestrian without you even asking him because of his ego. I think that particularly struck me. And also when you said that you didn't go with solutions because you wanted the political figures to feel like they can provide the solutions because that's their job. I don't know what to make of this, but I thought it was particularly interesting, and perhaps it is something that needs to be considered to get through things that we want to get through. And the other comment was for what Iacovos II said about that OPU is 15 years away. I want to disagree with that. I think you guys are very close, and I think you're doing a great job. And I would suggest organizing perhaps brainstorming sessions for more creative approaches to things. And I would also recommend collaborating with artists. We have a really vibrant artistic scene in Cyprus, and I think there's a lot of creative ideas that come out of that. From Bram's presentation, I saw some really creative things, and I don't think they're hard specifically to make. So I don't think you guys are far. So that's my comment and my suggestions.
Thank you very much, Artemis. I will see after the discussion now. We also have a WhatsApp group, Makariou Actions, and maybe we can start some new reflections there. We'll see. Actually, I have also one question, and we have 5-10 minutes to go. Because in Brussels is the biggest mobility week. What's the name?
European Mobility.
European Mobility Week. I'm not sure chronically when that started. If that make it more popular because of that, is it connected with this more institutionalized way of just closing some street one day? So did it make it more easy for the politicians? We're offering you the street every Sunday for 2 hours, or it was in another, it's totally different, nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I would say it's totally different because we have indeed like a car-free Sunday, but this just means that sometimes people take their car with their bike in the trunk and they come and drive through Brussels when it's car-free. So it's also kind of, like more punctual way. I don't think it really contribute to a more sustainable success, but maybe to echo quickly what Artemis said, the reason why we always said it's not our job is because we think it's the job of the people elected, but also people of the administration. There are many people working for the administration and the policy, and we believe it's their job to come up with solutions. And the ego part, I think it's both ego as looking for win-wins in the case. And I think also Christos has his hand raised.
So it was a great presentation and great actions with a good outcome. If you were to do the same again today? Or you're having the same goal today, would you take the same actions? Or would you do something different because times have changed, or you've learned something from them that you could do here in Cyprus?
Yeah, good question. I think in the case of the Ansbach, the massive picnic we did, I think I would do the same, because it needed like a big start of the process. On the other hand, I also see the added value of really involving people in the beginning in the participation process. That's also what I was going to say afterwards. I think also when Marina was talking, Iacovos, that it's also about, if possible, working as much with local people as possible, really on placemaking, like doing workshops, asking them, maybe making a few things, like Artemis said, with artists. And I think I would focus also a bit more on this approach of trying to get more people involved in the reimagination of the place. Yeah.
And you would involve both sides, so those that want the cars and those that don't, to try and understand both sides, or just focus on those people with a similar mindset to yours?
Well, the car is very difficult to, I think we had quite some research numbers, and the numbers show that the people who were going on the street with the car, they were just doing it for 1.2 kilometer. They were taking the car or this space just to kind of either circumvent the traffic jam or just use their car for 1.2 kilometer. So there is also something as being very car dependent. On the other hand, I always say when I work for municipalities that we have to seduce the car drivers into leaving their car further from the center. So I think it's both in a way to keep your foot down, but at the same time also listen to the needs of the car drivers and maybe accommodate this in a way that car drivers feel comfortable leaving their car somewhere and walk instead of having to pay massive amounts or spending their whole time driving around finding a parking spot.
That's the data for Brussels as a whole was what, 1.2 kilometers, the average?
No, I mean the people taking the car, they were just using the car for 1.2 kilometer, and they were just using this street to go from one side of the street to the other. While there are plenty of metros and you can walk. I mean, basically the center of Brussels is a 15-minute city, so it was just kind of car dependency.
Yeah. Thing for us too, but we don't have the metro and we don't even have the sidewalk street. We need to reclaim the sidewalks first, maybe.
Also that, yeah, I saw it. Reclaim the sidewalks. It's a good one.
Become the sidewalk.
Thank you, Christos. Marina, you wanted to add something before?
I did, but I think there's just so many things, and it's. I think it's okay. I think we have to thank Bram for giving us more insights into the process that they used. There are a lot of thoughts. I mean, for us, it's always exciting. Like Iacovos said before, it's exciting to hear and it's inspiring. But the struggle is how to translate this into our context, because we are not a very dense city. We are talking about a former high street, but that it's now half of it. It's like very fancy buildings, and then half of it is derelict, old buildings that are not used for many years. So it's a very complex context, and we need to face it, confront it, understand it. And I also want to emphasize what Artemis also said, that you said initially, about not coming up with solutions, because we already, in this first reaction to the decision of the municipality, of the municipal council to change the current situation in Makariou, we saw that the groups that they were coming together, they had different ideas of what would actually work there, because everybody's defending a different vision of Makariou. So it's important to highlight what is common and to be very simple. Like you said, less cars. You didn't provide a solution of how to divert the whole traffic situation, and because that is where we get lost among the ones that we are together, but then we get lost because we don't agree on how to do that because it's not our job. So it's very important. There are engineers who are paid for doing that, and then there are politicians who are voted to listen to us. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and then also I would say it's also their job to do or to think about participation and to get you on board in thinking this is a different case. Or if you at one point as a nonprofit want to do a European project, then you're also paid. This is a different scenario. But I think as activists in the first stage, I think you're totally right, Marina. It's about creating a list of demands. And in your case, the list of demands can be quite lengthy. I mean, lengthy, but not super crazy. Like you want to have space to walk on the sidewalk, both for people in wheelchairs, as children, as normal people, like more space for people. And then you can give some examples, less cars, air to breathe. There are all things where nobody can be against. So you're actually not attacking the cars. And as you said, if you provide a solution, maybe this will also shift the focus. So really keep hitting the nail of these are our demands. Like this is our list of demands. Very simple. This is what we want, and look for people to support you. It can be like it can be signatures, a petition. It can be workshops that you do, and maybe from that point of view, it can be it can become a spontaneous action as well. You can claim the sidewalk, for example. It's already a nice one. Yeah.
Actually, I like the last point, like claiming somehow indirectly, not attacking, let's say, the cars, so we need less cars. I mean, it can be also that, but as you also give some examples, we want, okay, we have Makariou, we don't have cars, but if the surroundings is full of cars, and that's another topic with the ULES, low emission zone, etc., etc. Which, okay, we need clear air or we need spaces with shade, etc., and that can have an indirect aspect on the, reducing the amount of cars around that area. Yeah, that's a nice.
And I would also say, like, really, the first big point you have to make is to denormalize the fact that cars are parking on the sidewalk. They already take the whole space, and then they're going to take the human space on the sidewalk. I think you really have to denormalize it because it has become, if I check Google Maps, it has become the norm in Cyprus. And I think you really have to stand your ground by saying, this is not normal. This is not in I don't know, in any other European city. You can exaggerate a bit because there are other places, but you could really say, like, look, this is not normal. We as pedestrians want to have our street. And a lot of people think, for example, Amsterdam was always the bike Walhalla. They had a lot of protests and fights in the 70s to become a bike city. So I think it's time to do this in Cyprus to come up for the rights of the pedestrians and the potential cyclists. But yeah, denormalize it.
Yeah, we have the Department of OPU for that. Some colleagues are quite advocate on this. Thank you very much. I think we don't have some other questions. That we are, we're on time. We'd like to thank you again for making space and time for this. And I would like you also, if you can share the presentation, if it's possible.
Sure.
And maybe the recording of the screen, because our part went a bit wrong. Last minute I realized that we cannot record through Google Workspace, if it's possible. And yeah, as Iacovos said, will be, if for in future, if you are for collaboration or some insights, always take in consideration your time, and maybe we get to know more in a later stage what Urban Fox did in the second stage. Thank you very much. I'm very excited that we got to know your actions.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to make some time for you. Thank you for asking, and wishing you all the best with the future. And if I can mean anything for you, let me know. I will always be there. okay, albeit from a distance, but happy to help if I can.
Thank you very much, everyone, that you attend the meeting here or online. See you around
Thank you.
Makariou.